Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Derry Girls, Season 3, Episode 5. In this episode, we are with the parents only on this one, and there is a deep, dark secret that gets revealed at the high school reunion. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Ashleigh, if you're out there, hi, girl. So, this episode, I'm going to assume, because Ashleigh had mentioned earlier that the actress who plays Claire was not available as often due to filming for Bridgerton. And I'm going to assume that is part of why we get an episode that is like exclusively the parents this time. We do see Orla and Aaron for like a minute, but it's very, very brief and could easily have been filmed like completely separate from the rest of the episode. And otherwise, we don't see any of the rest of the crew. So, and I'll be honest, when we went into the flashback, and it's a prolonged flashback, but initially I sort of thought what we were going to get was each of the girls from the crew being dressed and playing the role of their own mom in the past, if that makes sense. And I'm glad it wasn't, because it was like way more fun to actually see actors cast to be these older people. But I like initially was sort of thinking, oh, is this what they're going to do? And then once I realized like, no, they just got different actors, I was like, oh yeah. Plus if it's like a Bridgerton situation, although is her mother the one that's like super anxious and has her dress on inside out? Is that Claire's mom? I just realized that I don't know that I like zeroed in on who everybody was. But anyway, so the episode begins, and I was just like, what is happening here? First, we've got Sarah, who is reading a book on the Russian Revolution. And I will tell you what, personally, I have been very curious about the Russian Revolution after reading a few period murder mysteries set in like the 20s, in which there are people who have fled from it, and I have been sort of like, oh right, this is like a whole thing, and I do kind of want to know about it. But what Sarah is trying to do here is, Miss T says that it was Claire's mom with the dress inside out. Okay, that's perfect. Perfect. Sarah is saying to Jerry later that in school everybody thought I was a bimbo. So what I'm going to do is prove them all wrong. And she just doesn't understand like the concept of context. So later on, she does decide to try and show off some of her newly learned factoids. And it's like completely out of nowhere and unrelated to anything. And it is the weirdest thing. And that shit is so funny. I have y'all ever met anybody like this? And I think it's pretty safe to say usually when this happens, it's not somebody just trying to like spout for the sake of it. Usually it's somebody who is neurodivergent, and something you say like triggers a thought process in them. And so they just begin to talk about something, and you have to sort of like take a step back and be like, all right, where did that all just come from just now? Like, what was that? And I think about it, and that's like how the inside of my head is a lot of the time. So now seeing it like out loud, I'm like, wow, that would be very confusing, I'm sure, for people. But she's in the middle of this, and Mary is like very busy around the kitchen, and Jerry comes in, and he opens the fridge, and there is Not a thing in it. Nothing. Cleaned out. And he's like, what the hell? And Mary says, we're starting a new eating regimen. And Sarah says, no sugar, no dairy, no carbs, no meat. And he's like, yeah, that's just no food then. But we have oranges. We can have as many oranges as we like. And she carries a bag over, and there's like oranges all over the room. And there are different kinds, I will say that. We've got what looks like some tangerines even. But it's all turns out we need to drop a dress size before this school reunion. The school reunion is tonight, isn't it? Yeah. And the orange diet started when? About 20 minutes ago? 25 maybe? Okay, sure. And then Erin comes in. And it turns out what they're doing, she's busy with Orla doing the math on exactly how much weight they can lose by that evening. And it turns out it's almost a pound. And y'all, look, I'm not going to try and talk for too long here about diet culture. But honestly, this is not that far off to how a lot of people behave. At one point when she's like, well, is there anything that we can do to lose like 15 pounds? Jerry says something like, cut off one of your legs. And I remember a skit from a couple of years ago where a girl, it was two girls who were probably like size 20, 22, and they were each trying to get to weigh less than 200 pounds. And so they were deciding whether or not to cut off one of their legs. And it was like, it was a spoof video, but honestly, it ended with one of the girls being like, well, do you want to be under 200 pounds or not? And that was like where it ended. And I swear to God, y'all, these diets, these crash diets, I think back on some of them, and there's a page that circulates every now and then from Vogue magazine. And it is a diet that is supposed to lose you like, 20 pounds in a week or something hugely unhealthy. And at every meal, you can have a glass of wine. At least a glass. However, for breakfast, you get like a hard-boiled egg on whole wheat toast. For lunch, you get a like chicken breast, and that's almost it, if I recall. And dinner is like another poached egg. But you basically drink an entire bottle of wine over the course of the day with no food. And that was a published dietary recommendation in Vogue magazine in like the 80s, I think it was. We're fucked up, kids. We are a fucking nightmare. Exactly. Ms. T is in the chat talking about the cabbage soup diet. If I never hear about that diet again, there are so many women I knew who did that one. For those who aren't aware, cabbage has so much fiber, and it is basically, you make this soup that's like a diuretic, and you only have that soup for like 2 out of your 3 meals a day. And it's supposed to keep you full because it's like, but really the thing you're doing is you're trying to cause your body to shit out a bunch of liquid so that you drop water weight. And it's just, it's presented, these sorts of things, as like, oh, well, you just do that to start off, to like kickstart things. You do that for like, just for like a week, and then you like begin to add in regular food again. And it's said as if that's like a perfectly reasonable thing to do. That just kickstarting by starving yourself for a week is just, well, just like, yeah. And I remember vividly believing that. I remember what it felt like to think that was how it worked, because everything told me that was how it worked. And now I'm fat because I fucked my metabolism up forever. It's never coming back because my body doesn't know what to do anymore because I've fucked with it too many times. Literally went 10 full days without eating any solid food. I went 10 days on the lemon juice, maple syrup, and cayenne pepper, like cleanse. No solid food for 10 days, you guys. I still think about that and I'm like, I can't imagine what the fuck I like. And I convinced myself I felt fine. I don't remember, to be honest, how I felt, except that when I finally decided to have some like food that was, I think, like some sweet potato and rice, I was on the floor in such pain that I thought I might die because my body didn't know how to handle the solid food anymore. And I genuinely was about to call 911. And I don't even remember why I didn't, except that maybe it like began to abate, but it was really bad. And I thought I was doing something helpful to myself. I really did. I thought this was good. Oh God, if I could go back in time and slap and shake myself. This is like when people talk about if you could go back, what's the thing you would tell yourself? And it would be, stop dieting. You're fucking your body up. Genuinely. This can't be undone because your body just doesn't understand. But it was done. Ms. T, I love how at the dance all the women are so hungry after not eating since noon. Oh my God, yeah. That's the thing, is that apparently everybody was just starving themselves, which is like, this is actually a thing at the Oscars for those who want some other disturbing information. Dieting by basically eating almost nothing for a few days before the Oscars so that all of your muscles show, or your like clavicle and your calf muscles are more defined. It's basically like doing the dehydration thing that bodybuilders do before they go up on stage. It is very, very common. So as much as this feels ridiculous, and it is to lose any actual weight, doing a sort of dehydration thing and not eating very much right before an event is a thing if you're already super slender, to just be camera ready. And they would never touch an orange. It's way too much sugar. Not going to happen. Oh, Ashley's here. Hi, Ashley. K-pop diets are next level if you ever look them up. Oh, God. The apple diet. You can eat 1 apple a day. Yes, that seems reasonable to meet energy requirements as a functioning adult. Yep. You do only feel hungry for the first 2 days. I stopped eating for nearly 3 weeks after my nanny died. Oh, I'm sorry. And only started eating again as my family were pressuring me to do so. Yeah, this is the thing, is if there are people around you that tell you you should eat something, it can go a couple ways. One is that everybody being genuinely afraid for you actually sinks in. Or if you're doing this like diet because you're trying to, improve your life, you can get into this weird headspace where everybody telling you that you should eat something convinces you that you're better than them. Oh yeah, they would say that. Look at them eating all that. I'm not like that. I'm so glad I'm not like that. And that is definitely a place that I would be. I would just like, we all have things that we sort of like cling to make ourselves feel superior. And it can come and go what that is. But diet is a massive one. It is so quickly weaponized, what you're eating and what's in your shopping cart and whatever. And this is part of why, like, as a fat person, when I go out to eat, I get very self-conscious because people will check out my cart. I've seen them looking. What's happening when you see it happen. And I haven't thankfully been approached by strangers. I have had friends for whom this has been a thing, but I have been like, I made a salad for lunch, and when I was working at the bank, and I ate my salad in the break room, because I love salad, because it's good. And my boss walked by and said, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." Like, for why? Okay. I know. Cool. It's just one of those things, you know, people really think that they're like, it's the same thing as being fat and like going for a hike or a walk. People will encourage you in this way that they think is being supportive. It's not. It's not. It's patronizing. It's belittling. It's extremely revealing about what you think of us. And if I were a thin woman going for a walk, would I be stopped by a neighbor that I don't know and have never spoken to who asks me how much I've lost so far? Probably wouldn't. Did that happen to me 2 separate times in my neighborhood? 2 times? 2 different women? Yes, it did. 2 different women. How much have you lost so far? I'm just fucking taking a walk, Karen. Can I just do that? Thank you. Great. So anyway, this was a little triggering, but not in such a bad way because it's so exaggerated here that it didn't feel like they were really trying to say anything, you know? And I will mention too that in the episode where they are going to the seashore and the girl that they meet is a friend who has lost a bunch of weight, I do appreciate that even as Sarah is saying you could be 3 of you would make one of her. She says something about how she was a gorgeous looking girl, but you'd make, she'd make 3 of you. And I did appreciate Sarah saying that she was beautiful and not like being shitty about her appearance. Just it is purely about how big her body was. And she didn't really seem to be like crappy about it, to be honest. I appreciated how careful they were with that. And I also like just mentioning appearance here when the woman says to Sarah, "Is there a picture in your attic?" complimenting how she just still looks great. And obviously Sarah is so pleased. And Mary says something like, "A lot of work goes into it." And that comment could be taken as sort of shitty. But honestly, it didn't feel it. It felt like her being like, oh, she appreciates hearing that because she really works hard to look good. And there is nothing wrong with looking hard to look good. There's no judgment really with it. You know, it's just sort of like her being like, well, yeah, she'll be glad someone noticed because she really makes an effort. And I appreciate when a woman caring about how she looks isn't made into an inherently negative like personality trait, because it's just such a trap. You know, we're supposed to look a certain way all the time. And if we don't, then we have let ourselves go. We've given up. But if we do care, we have to make sure nobody sees that we care. They can only see the finished product because it has to seem as if it's taken no effort. And all of the actual effort has to be done behind closed doors and kept to ourselves. So if anything is said out loud, we're instantly high maintenance. And it's just, you know, there's no winning. So I did kind of like that moment with her just being like, oh yeah, and she puts a lot of work into it. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm like 15 minutes into this and I have not even gotten past the first scene. Holy shit. But anyway, it comes down to they are not going to be able to lose any fucking weight. And they, the girls are very sympathetic with the moms dealing with going to this high school reunion and all of their friends that probably haven't made it. I thought they were referencing if their friends died in like terrorist attacks, like the Troubles. I thought that's what and then they were like talking about old age. Y'all, do you know what happened to me the other day? I'm walking by they're doing a bunch of construction across the street from me still. Somebody has the fucking radio going. And they're playing Green Day. I don't even remember what song it was, but it was a Green Day song. And I'm like, oh man, I haven't heard this song in such a long time. I didn't know it was the actual radio. And then all of a sudden it's like WKPL playing the classics. And I was like, the what? the classics from 30 years ago, basically. I just about died. Seriously? So anyway, these girls looking at these women who are only like a couple decades older, and it's basically as good as dead in their eyes. Wow, I remember those days very well. It's like it was yesterday, but it wasn't yesterday. It was 20 years ago. It was over 20 years ago, you guys. Oh my God. I absolutely cannot with time. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you're talking about going to school in olden times in a horse and cart. And I love when Mary gets real defensive and is like, we didn't go to school in a horse and cart. And Sarah chimes in, Eileen, okay, did Mary? Ah, yeah, so she did. Anyway, so I'm going to get past this first scene, I swear. But Joe has gone over to the neighbors and had like a fry up. And he is being very snotty to Jerry for not being supportive, even though he's getting his food somewhere. Yeah, go out, Jerry. You don't need to depend on this household. Go and get yourself something to eat. It's fine. Turns out what they are worried about is Jeanette Joyce, formerly O'Shea. Now, this was interesting because it turns out that because like the main thing for me is a lot of these folks that they are going to be seeing at the reunion are people that they already see all the time. And that's the thing that I find really fascinating about like wanting to look great for a high school reunion is usually it's going to be you seeing a bunch of folks that you haven't seen in decades. So you want to look really good for that, like first time seeing them in ages. But they're seeing a lot of people that they just like see all the time. But this Jeanette Joyce, formerly O'Shea, is Jenny Joyce's mother. And Jenny Joyce is the off-key singer, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The one who's just insufferable. And she is... Aaron is just like, you were friends with her mother? Are you serious? And Aaron gets this, like, she's almost like, feels betrayed. Mary looks very embarrassed about it. But what it turns out is that she had gotten married to a surgeon, and this turned her head. And now she thinks she's better than all of her friends. She's all high and mighty now, using fancy words like brunch. And then she says, I could tell you a thing or two about Jeanette Joyce, formerly O'Shea. I know what happened on Leavers Night. I remember. I was there. And everybody is looking at her and they're like, what are you talking about? And she's like, nothing. For all the world, sounds like they committed murder. Straight up. So we go to the actual reunion. And this thing is wild. It looks like it's still the gymnasium of the school. Lights, band, the whole thing. Have you guys ever been to a high school reunion? Because I'll tell you what. I didn't graduate with the class that I actually went to most of my school years with. I went to the same school for 3 years, and then my senior year I left and I went to Wild Arts for my senior year. And I didn't have enough time to get close to anybody at Wild, so I wouldn't care about going to that reunion. And the people that I knew the best from high school were mostly a year ahead of me. So I would if I went to my own high school reunion, most of my actual friends wouldn't be there. They were a year ahead. So I have never felt any interest in simply just the like human connection aspect of it. And then there's the whole like people seeing you after not having seen you in years, which just to fall into a complete stereotype, I have gained so much weight. And no, I don't want to break your memory of me as the absolutely stunning Salma Hayek-esque student. No, you will remember me as that forever because I will not. No, I'm not doing it. But I just never actually, like, the friends that I have that I went to high school with, my friends Lace and Mary, I'm still friends with them. And Lace was a bridesmaid, but she had to drop out because she had a whole thing happen with her house. Mary came to my wedding, so I still see them. Otherwise, no interest. So I just am very curious about, like, what it is normally like, because I have heard that these sorts of depictions of them, where it's essentially like a dance, are sort of in the minority because it takes so much, like, money and organizing to do something up like this, and that usually it's like in a restaurant or something like that, you know? So I'm just kind of curious, like, what it looks like, because I didn't get an invite. Like I said, my high school that I actually graduated from, I don't think they do those. And the one that I had been in wouldn't send me an invite because I didn't graduate with the rest of the class. So I'm always curious, like, who is the person who is in charge of organizing a reunion and everything to begin with? Let's see. Ashleigh says, I remember getting indignant when I was in college in Dublin and was asked if we had indoor plumbing, only to go home and repeat the comment and find out that my dad grew up without indoor plumbing. Life comes at you fast. It is really wild to, like, realize how different things were not that far before you were born. Like, yeah, my mom grew up in a house that, the kindest way I can put it, is really trashy. And they had indoor plumbing-ish. It was like one of those things that, very unreliable. Let's see. Ashley says, my 10-year reunion would be this year. Ashley, shut your mouth. Shut up. Get out of here. Miss T says, in the U.S., it's the class president. Oh, our reunions weren't dances either. Okay. All right. Yeah. So everybody is here, and including Sister Michael. And she is, like, talking about how untrustworthy a lot of the students here are, and that she's going to be conducting random searches throughout the night because they have some valuable paintings, and this is a particularly untrustworthy group of people. I love the gag where every man went to the same store for a new suit for this event, and they are all wearing the exact same suit. This is such a thing if you live in a small town, especially in an era where there was not online shopping. This happened at my school, and actually my friend Lace, who I mentioned, she bought the exact same prom gown as me, but hers was in black and mine was in red. So we actually were kind of like, oh, that's dope. And we didn't mind. We were very close to begin with. And the fact that we each had picked, like, a very different look, but the same gown, and we just did them differently, we were sort of tickled by it. But there was one store, you know, to go get your prom gowns. You could go to, like, department stores and stuff, but they didn't have the same selection. And it was usually, like, in our town, because of how big a deal prom was, you wanted your dress pretty early because it was, like, expensive enough that you had to get the ball rolling, ordering it, and they would, like, alter it and whatnot. And it was a fucking process, you know? The department stores tended to not really have prom gowns in to try on until, like, a week or two before, at which point, like, good luck. If you don't find anything you like, you're not getting a dress. So we would start looking for prom gowns, like, 3 months out at least. And it was almost always this one little shop, and the place was fucking packed. And I still remember I was like probably like a size 10, like when I was at my heaviest in high school, and finding gowns that fit. You guys, the 90s were a wild time. You had to have no hips or you were considered a freak, and it was really tough. So yeah, immediately we've got the Claire's mom, whose name I'm forgetting, showing up and being like, is Jeanette here? And Mary's like, oh, I don't know. Oh, do you mean, oh, right, her. Oh, I forgot all about her. And Claire's mom just like, yeah, sure you did. So here comes Michelle's mom, right? And I wish I could remember her name. Y'all can help me out if you want. We find out that she had been a punk, which fits beautifully. And she has brought her cousin with her. Everybody thinks that it's her side piece. It is not. It is her cousin who is also gay. And there's a lovely scene later where they're like talking about like, he's a gay. Our daughter's a gay. How's she finding it? She's figuring it out. Doesn't have a lot of experience. How are you finding it? Difficult sometimes, but just worried because life can be hard if you're different, but we're figuring it out too. It was like very wholesome and adorable. And the whole like energy of it with him just being like, yeah, but she's got much less chance of having an unplanned pregnancy if she's a lesbian, and they're being like, good looking out, man, definitely. Excuse me, I'm still recovering from this cold. Ugh, boy. But yeah, that was just an unexpected bit of like cuteness in there that I liked a lot. They're just so supportive of her, and I appreciate the way it's kept fairly light, Oh, thank you, Ashleigh. Ashleigh says, Claire's mom is Geraldine. Michelle's mom is Deirdre. Okay. So yeah, it turns out Rob, who they all call Brad, because he looks like a Brad, even though he's named Rob, they think that because he's American, he looks like a Brad. But he's not American. He's Canadian. This is their James. Right? Like, right? Because this is her cousin. He's from another part of the world. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares what he has to say. I wish so much that James would meet him, that he would still be around. Because James, I feel like he'd be like weirdly comforted to know it's not just him. Like, this is just what it's like, But yeah, they're talking about how like America isn't particularly safe. Well, no, it's not, but Canada is. But at this point, Mary points at him and is like, you were there that night. And he says, and what a night it was. And everybody is like, word, what's that mean? But they don't get a straight answer. Joe interrupts. We have talks. They start talking about the food and everything. And like I said, Joe is here. He isn't part of this, but he is still here. So why not? What part of America are you from? Montreal. Can't say I'm familiar with it, though. There is a Montreal in Canada, Is that right? Anyway, then there's this dude who asks Sarah, would you like to dance? And she says, I really would. And he pulled his hand out, intending to take her hand so that he can dance with her. But she just hands him her plate and asks him to hold it. And she brings Mary onto the dance floor with her. Y'all, I didn't see that coming. And that was fucking heartbreaking to watch. Truly, I should have realized what she was about to do. When she at first said, I really do, Siren, I was like, oh, nice. Okay. And then she hands him the plate and I was like, fucking Christ. So anyway, Mary is so jumpy about this entire thing. And she starts talking about how he knows. And both her and Sarah turn to look at Rob, who is watching them without, he doesn't have like a particular expression. He's just watching them and he makes eye contact. But I was sort of like, what's going on? And the beginning of the flashback begins and there's all this footage of riots and bombs and I'm thinking like, oh my God, is it something to do with all of this? But this is just to sort of remind us the backdrop of what they were living through at the time. And like, obviously, this shit is very much still happening in the 90s. Like, it's not the same level. They're trying to calm things down, but it was like quite a scene. And so it makes sense later on when we find out like they are basically locked into this dance and nobody can come because of a roadblock that has been put up. And they're feeling really restless. And it's a weird vibe that I can't quite imagine because, you know, when you're in school, your world is very small. It circulates pretty much around the 5 people or so that you are the closest with. You know, the rest of the world exists. It doesn't really necessarily affect you that much if your parents are able to shield you from it to any degree. But stuff as you get older starts to leak through. And that's just a regular life. When you're living through events like this, and there's genuine dangers like all over the place that are difficult to predict, or maybe, you know, family or friends who get involved if you're, you know, part of the riots or whatever. And knowing that all of this is going on, but you still just have to go take a math exam. That's a really weird thing to think about. And I think about it sometimes with COVID, you know, like our lives just changed overnight, the way we do everything. And we went back to normal to a degree, but there are kids who had to keep going to school through this like world shifting event. And I will never really be able to understand what that was like, and having to carry on living a regular life and just doing your best, even though you're surrounded by danger and violence and the potential for God knows what to happen. It's just wild. So we get these 2 girls, beautifully cast, as young Sarah and Mary. And I love Mary's outfit. She's got like a little bit of a hair bump going on. She's all in purple. Mary is all in like this sort of bright green, buttoned right up to the bottom of her neck, whereas Sarah's dressed a lot more like, she's got clothing that is more stylish, and it's the same as in the present, which is interesting because I had sort of expected that Mary grew more conservative with her clothing, you know, because that can happen as you get older. You are more self-conscious as your body changes and you cover up where you didn't before. But now it looks like this has always been how Mary dressed, was a lot more conservatively. She's in this, like, a dress that wouldn't be out of place in 1910, really, you know? So I love that they're being dropped off and her dad is saying, like, don't dance with boys. And they're like, Dad, it's a disco party. And he's like, oh, right, don't look at the boys. And if one of the wee bastards won't take no for an answer, use this. And he gives them what I think is a field hockey stick. Not entirely sure what that was, but yeah. At this point, Sarah is like, you should come to the disco with us. And Mary is like, girl, what the fuck are you doing? So they head in. They do take the hockey stick with them. So I guess. So Mary says something about how tonight's going to be wild. And they strike this like strut. The camera goes to this like glittery interior and they're really feeling themselves. And then they see there is almost nobody here. And the girls and boys have been separated to different sides of the room. I said the rules because this is the moment where the headmistress is saying, I don't make the rules. And they're like, you do make the rules. You're headmistress. That's true. I do make the rules. Here's another one for you. Backchat me. And it's disco detention. I love her because she's still got a really like aggressive vibe, but she's still extremely different from Sister Michael. You know, like they both have this, you are not going to fuck with me today, child. But the Sister Michael is much more because I am not interested. Whereas this lady is like, because I will crack you in half. So we get this lovely pan over the faces of all the girls and boys. I really, really have to say how much I appreciate how much television from other countries just has regular fucking people on it. If you had the scene in the US, these people wouldn't be cast. Like, unless it was a really unusual TV show. It is so homogenized. Like, everybody is just varying levels of pretty. Even the ones that are supposed to be not pretty are just so pretty. And they're always, like, clearly older than what they're supposed to, you know? And this slew of kids, some of them are clearly older, but there are a few that I'm like, no, they look like they're a high schooler. Like, there's just, you know, there is a feel to the way these kids look that to me rang really true. I was just immediately believing it. So I appreciated that a lot. And at this point, Geraldine comes up. Would you know that my frock is inside out? She says there was a Ribena incident. I don't know what that is. Is that a drink? I love when she says everybody is looking at me, and they look around and are like, nobody is looking at you. And she's about to go home. They convince her nobody would be able to tell. She gets back in line, and immediately Michelle's mom, Deirdre, runs up and is like, hey, your dress is on inside out. Are you aware? Girl, you're killing me. But, Ashleigh says purple sugary drink, a grape drink. Okay, yeah, that would explain it. And yeah, she's got her cousin Rob, and I really love this. His whole vibe is so Jamesian. There's just, yeah, Rob thinks he's funny. It's fucking exhausting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this a line that Michelle said at the beginning of the series? Because that feels really familiar. And I know that the point is supposed to be that she's a Michelle-ish type doing the same thing as Michelle, but I could swear. I'm not certain though. Anyway, his family are visiting from America, and they're shitting themselves about him maybe getting, I don't know, killed or something. Again, is that a lot? Like, this feels very familiar. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, he has to stick with them. She has a note. This girl, by the way, playing Deirdre is so pretty. She's got this, like, I don't know, she's got a look to her, and she does vibe as like relation to Michelle. I really liked it. So I love too when she asks Mary, because Mary has this little box that she's like clutching to her abdomen, and she says, have you brought sandwiches? Yes, Deirdre. Yes, I have. And you'll be glad of them later. Mary's just Mary. That's just who she been this whole time. Love it. Oh my God. So. All right. This is when we get the announcement that they are going to be locked in. And that now they're going to be saying Hail Marys all night. But we do get a really fun sort of like series of intercut moments of Jeanette's entry into the dance with the present and the past. And it's really fun to see the way that they like jump from one to the other, and how similar the place looks and how much people have changed, and yet have not. Like the way Deirdre's dancing is essentially the same as she used to. Just the whole way that they did this, I thought was really cute. And yeah, when Jeanette walks in, she in the past had this like kind of dope sort of turban and her hair all curled, and she's definitely like working with a little bit more style, it feels like, than the rest of them. But in the present, Jeanette walks in and just walks right on past them without even looking at them. Does the whole like pretend to not see them. And then she and her husband begin to basically waltz in, I don't even remember what song is playing, but it's like a rock song that they're doing like a fucking two-step to. It is the weirdest thing. And I love Mary's line here. If she was chocolate, she'd eat herself. I have never heard that before. But I love it. That is very evocative. It's evocative in both the like, she loves herself so much, but also the short-sightedness of it. You know, like she'd like bite off her nose to spite her face, you know, but like she'd bite it off and eat it. But it's same energy. Anyway. And when Sarah says, well, she did marry a surgeon, I'd be delighted too. What's so great about being married to a surgeon? The money. Plus, that particular surgeon doesn't talk. She's living the dream, girls. A man that doesn't talk. And what a delight it is to to like watch a scene where women are talking about how great it would be if their husbands couldn't speak. Because you know how many times we have seen the reverse of this scene. I mean, this was like an entire series of stand-up comics in the 90s. And I am obsessed with the weirdness of this scenario. This is a really fun bit. 15 years I've been nursing in that hospital, not a peep out of him. He used to talk when they started going out. Then he just stopped. Jesus, but that's odd. You're telling me, don't get me wrong, he's a great surgeon, but I wouldn't want to be stuck in a lift with him. And they're all trying to theorize about why. Why would he just stop talking? And the fact that he stopped talking when he started dating her, especially, really weird. And it turns out later on, he says like that he fucks up a lot. And he apparently gave the wrong version of a message to Jeanette years ago. But at this point, I'm like, how many of those particular types of mistakes did you make before? Like, that can't be all it is, right? I don't know. It's such a weird bit. Anyway, finally, deciding that there's no point in like continuing this fucking farce, we have Mary just yelling Jeanette's name over the music, trying to attract attention. And it was a really interesting move because I thought Mary was going to try and play it cool and just act like she didn't notice, but maybe do something passive aggressive or pretend something was an accident, like spill a drink on her and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you right there. You know, that kind of thing. Standing there and just yelling her name is actually a lot more direct than I was anticipating. And I'm kind of proud of that for her. Like, good for her. Nevertheless, Jeanette really tries to ignore them for a minute. And then when they yell like the fifth time, she turns and, oh, hi, guys. I didn't even realize you were here. Mm-hmm. And I love that she introduces herself as Jenny Joyce, formerly O'Shea, as they have been talking about her. And she introduces her husband, the surgeon. It's really nice to meet him. He's a surgeon. I don't know if you guys are aware, but he's pretty tired. He's going to have to go home early tonight because he's a surgeon. And he has a really early surgeon call in the morning because he's a surgeon. It's just like over and over and over again. This is one of those things that the cliche of women being married to doctors, having like made it, it is 100% the money. Like, do not even play about that. People talk about like, well, and also he's somebody who cares about people. No. It's the money. And that's the only thing. Like, get out of here. But it's also really funny to me how, like, the idea to me of being married to a doctor, like, I get that there's money, but also it's like you are on call all the time and you have crazy hours, and it's just, it sounds like a nightmare to me. Like, that's the last thing I would want, is to be married to somebody who's a doctor. No, that sounds terrible. Like, ew. Anyway, this is when things start to sort of heat up. The boys are trying to get the husband to respond to any question. If the question is yes or no, he just nods or sort of lifts his glass or whatever. And if it's not a yes or no, Jenny answers, or Jeanette answers for him. She just like steps in and it's just like, oh yeah, he paid a lot for it, you know? So I do love when Joe asks, when you take somebody's tonsils out, do you hang on to them and put them in a storage cupboard, or do you just chuck them away? And he nods and he's like, thank you. I'm going to pass that on, because earlier Orla was like, he won't give my tonsils back no matter how much I ask him. So she brings up, we should all do brunch sometime. And I love Sarah just like taking a deep breath in response. And when Mary says, I'm going back to school, I'm studying English, she just starts laughing and says that's a hilarious joke. Bitch, what? What the fuck? Are you serious? I was like ready for an actual brawl to break out at that point. Genuinely. Like, that's just, you don't laugh at somebody telling you about, like, oh my God. Oh, my blood was up. I was really surprised that this didn't result in like a slap fight. Anyway, so we go back to the girls at the dance in the past, and they are discussing whether or not they want to go through with it. And Mary is trying to convince everybody to just have a sandwich and enjoy the disco, which is just them sitting on opposite sides of the gymnasium staring at each other. I love when Deirdre says the gymnasium is shit, and one of the boys across the room like smiles and waves at them like he thinks they're talking about him. I don't know if that is supposed to be the dude that Sarah turned down for a dance in the present. I think that's supposed to be the same guy, but it's very hard to tell. But anyway, yeah, this is the moment. Any second, those doors are going to open and a bunch of absolute rides are going to come in and snog the faces off us. And no, the IRA have mounted a roadblock, which means nobody can enter the school grounds and nobody can leave. But it's not all bad news. Sister Matthew has very kindly offered to lead us in the rosary. Oh boy. So we go to the bathroom in the present, and Mary is like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to out her. And everybody is like, I don't know if you should do it. You should probably keep it to yourself. Just leave it. And she's like, you know what? It's been 20 years I've been dealing with this. She says, I've been carrying it around with me. No more. I am dealing. And she stomps out there, and all the ladies are just kind of like, all right, I guess that's it. So they follow her out. We go back into the flashback, and everybody arguing about whether or not they're going to do it. And Mary begins to psych them up and is like, everything that we want to do is interrupted, we are told no all the time. Let's do something for once, just because we actually want to do it. Just to fucking do, so we can say we lived for once. Jesus Christ. And I am absolutely not sure what it's going to be that does it. So we go back to the present. Mary has gone up to Jeanette, and she's like, oh yeah, I am going to tell. We have photographs because Brad took photos, and I buried it. There is photographic evidence, and she turns and stomps out to go and dig it up. All of the boys follow, and she says, come to the fairy tree. Here we go. She begins to dig up, and finally Jerry is like, you didn't kill somebody, did you? And they begin to dig with their bare hands. Jeanette interrupts and is like, you can't do this. And Mary gives her the chance and is like, all right, well, are you going to fess up? I'll stop if you're going to fess up. And she just shakes her head, and then Mary goes back to digging. Oh, my bad. Mary had a spoon. She's got I don't know where she got that spoon, but that's what she's digging with, is a spoon. And finally, she's like, all right, fine, I'm going to do it. And then she says to her husband, Richard, I am so, so sorry. And she pulls her hair to the side and pulls her jacket off her shoulder. And we cut back before we see what's going on here to the scene of Deirdre tattooing a skull and crossbones on her neck. And each place that it is, like her neck, there is just no way he wouldn't have seen it. It's so weird. Apparently, she's just been putting concealer over it this whole time. And Mary's is on her wrist, the inside of her wrist. On the inside of her ankle. Whose was on the wrist? Somebody had a wrist. I think maybe that was Geraldine. And it looks like I'm trying to see exactly where everybody's is. Sarah's on the ankle, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the big secret that they've been carrying around is they all have this secret, very small tattoo that is nigh on invisible if you don't zero in on it. It is the kind of stick and poke, I think is the way you call it. But yeah, it's so faded at this point. And yeah, okay, so Geraldine has a wrist, and because I guess she did her own, also Deirdre has it on her wrist. And ankle and back of foot. Oof, that looks like it hurt. But yeah, these tattoos, their men have not ever even noticed. I love Jerry. Have you had a tattoo since 1977? And I've never seen it. We're very good at hiding them, Jerry. We're out of fortune in concealer. If the truth came out, our lives would be over. I love the one dude, I think it's Geraldine's husband, who just says, well, that's not true, is it, love? Imagine if our girls found out we had these. They'd think they could do whatever they wanted. We wouldn't have a leg to stand on. We broke so many laws. I love this so much. What a weird, this is the kind of thing that I know how long ago it was. So the concept of having a tattoo has become so normalized, and that's not to say there aren't still people who are scandalized by them, because 100% Owen's grandparents, they do not know what to do because their granddaughter has gotten several tattoos now. She just turned 18, and the moment she turned 18, she was going out there and getting tattooed. And she's gotten some awesome ones too. They're beautiful, but they just disapprove of that entirely. And they also didn't approve of her getting her nose pierced when she did that. They're very conservative about all of that stuff. And so I do know that there's still people out there, but it's also, even today, with it being as normalized as it is, it's still really frowned upon in a lot of professions. You have to cover it up. You've got to wear a Band-Aid over it. You've got to wear makeup over it, or you have to wear long sleeves to cover it up. And there are a lot of places that still won't hire you if you've got visible tattoos or if your hair is an unnatural color like yours truly. Hold on one sec. Sorry, my throat. So, it's interesting because we're sort of in this in-between period where I think eventually, like in another couple decades, you'll be able to work any job and have visible tattoos probably. But, you know, not that long ago, you probably couldn't even have gotten a job at like McDonald's. Excuse me. It was just so much more frowned upon. And it was like, especially women having a tattoo, it was just seen as like a mark of you being trashy and probably a slut. Just generally like a little bit too fast and loose and free with your body. And I've read a number of like, you know, autobiographies about women who had gotten one and kept it hidden from practically everybody. They got it specifically in a place that nobody would see unless they were like in bed together. And it's just an interesting thing to me to look at how much times have changed and how body art has changed and the quality of it and the difference in the way people approach it. These ladies got skulls and crossbones. For why? No reason. Just because it was punk. You know, like there's no real significance to choosing that symbol. It doesn't seem like, just because it was badass, you know? And I enjoy that they did this just as a means of like doing something rebellious because they didn't rebel in other ways. And Sarah apologizes to her dad and he says, I'm not bothered with that, love. Your mother had a tattoo. And they're like, what? Where? And he just looks at him and gives him a look and he doesn't answer them. And I'm like, it was on her ass, 100% on her ass. So at this point, Jeanette is like, why did you have to fucking do this? Why couldn't you just left it alone? And Mary says, because you think you're better than us and this proves that you aren't. I don't think I'm better than you. I never thought I was better than you. You stopped speaking to us once you met your fancy boyfriend. You didn't even come to my 18th birthday because you told Richard we definitely weren't invited. I told Richard you definitely were invited. And then all of a sudden, Richard is like, fuck. And I love the expression on Jeanette's face. Richard's really great at surgery. Not so good on the passing on of messages. And this is when he says, see, this is why I don't talk. Well, I suppose. I really do like, though, the concept that this whole thing comes down to a big misunderstanding. Because I don't like plots that are centered around a misunderstanding where if people had just talked to each other, it could have been avoided, like this whole thing we just watched. But this sort of thing where the misunderstanding took place years ago because people thought it was a signal that someone didn't like them and had snubbed them, it makes sense that you didn't talk about it because you thought somebody was ending your friendship and being a shithead. And why would you want to keep interacting with that person? Like, this is a situation where it all happened already because of a thing from years ago. And that's a way different thing to watch. It's much more gratifying to find out it was a misunderstanding than knowing it is the whole time and just being impatient with everybody as you're watching it unfold in front of you. So I really liked that moment of just realization. I'm like, shit. So then Deirdre, she opens the box and she takes the Polaroids out that they had buried. And I love it. They're looking at the photos and saying, like, we look at our smiles, look at how cute we were. We had no idea how bad things were going to get. And then all of a sudden, one of them, I think it's Geraldine, is like, that's not us. Yeah, those are not us. And I really like the idea that this is like a completely different set of pictures buried in a spot that they were able to find still. What are the odds of this? You know, they put down these photos and they were like, I hope someday some girls find these and realize what bad bitches we were. And maybe somebody did they just dug up some pictures, you know, who knows? But it's cute that somebody else did it. Oh, Ashleigh says, there's genuinely a little part of me that can't stop thinking about how fucked they are for digging up a fairy tree. What is a fairy tree specifically, Ashleigh? Because when she said that, I meant to like stop and mention it, but I was on a roll about something else and I forgot. My parents are still very much not under my roof about tattoos and makeup, but were okay when my sister moved out and got one on her forearm. Interesting. She's been talking to me about getting a second one recently, and I think the shock horror may kick in with tattoo number 2. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, the way that, like, we all have our sort of point of balance. And if you get more tattoos than XYZ, you're kind of, like, really into tattoos. But if you have fewer, it's like, oh, yeah, I think he's got, like, 1 or 2 tattoos. And it's, like, nothing. My maid of honor, Sydney, they are covered in them, like neck, back, front, thighs, top of feet, top of hands, all over. And they were a tattoo artist or an artist. So they were practicing on themselves a lot of the time. A lot of the tattoos they've got are their own work. And I think that's pretty dope. But Owen just got his very first tattoo for his birthday a couple weeks ago. And he just got, it's the nerdiest thing, you guys. It's like the Marvel band that goes around the top of the certain editions of special edition comics. And it's so nerdy, but it looks pretty good. You know, I like it. And it made me go, maybe you should just get a bunch more tattoos, actually, babe. Because with the shaved head and the beard, if you got a bunch of tattoos, you look like tough. I'm into it. Hawthorn tree on its own in a field signifies where fairies live. If you mess with one, the fairies will mess with your lives. People around your home will have horrible accidents. There was a whole motorway diverted once to avoid fucking with one. That is amazing. Ashleigh says, like, I don't believe, but I'm also not going to risk it. Exactly. Like how I feel about Bloody Mary. You look into a mirror and you say Bloody Mary 3 times, and she's supposed to show up. Do I think that's going to happen? No. Have I ever looked in a mirror and said it 3 times? Absolutely fucking not. Why would I ever do that? Why would I just invite that? No. It's very easy to just not do, so I won't. It's fine. Yeah, no, I get it. All right, I'm over time. I've got to wrap up. I can't believe there's only like 2 episodes left. Ugh, I'm going to die. So sad. All right, guys, until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.